Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. I'm Samrana. This is me talking about everything I like from books, series, movies, etc. For this episode, I decided to talk about the one and only, the best 18th century novelist, Jane Austen. I would say she's a 19th century novelist, but she was born in the 18th century. Anyway, I have been reading her books since I was in high school, and lately I've experienced all her stories, mainly the known 6 novels. There's Sense and Sensibility, there's Pride and Prejudice, there's Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, and Persuasion. This woman is my favorite author. I know it sounds like the most cliche thing I can possibly say. Jane Austen is my favorite author. Well, she is my favorite author, but for way more other reasons than just because she's famous. Through all her stories, I've just witnessed a pattern of female empowerment that helped me way too much. She just makes me relate to each and every one of her characters, no matter how diverse they are, how different they are. You can find yourself in each and one of them. I bet you can do that even if you don't identify as a female. Let's talk about who Jane Austen is. So I definitely watched the movie Becoming Jane, which didn't give me much information other than she was in love with a certain man called Tom Lefroy. So I did my own research about her. Jane Austen was born in England, and she died in England at the age of 42. She was born in 1775. She was the daughter of a pastor. Her mother was educated. They were slightly moderate. They weren't filthy rich, but they were not poor either. They lived in a very high society in the aristocrat rural area of England. Jane Austen was definitely not an only child. So she had 7 siblings. And among those 7 siblings, she had one sister, Cassandra. She was very, very close to Cassandra. She was her older sister, and they were inseparable, which is something that you're gonna notice if you read any of her novels. None of her novels have a unique child. She reflects a lot of herself in her books. So her heroines are often supported by siblings, or at least a sibling figure. The relationship between her and her sister will come up later. She went to school for 18 months in a boarding school with her sister, called Reading Abbey Girls' School. She went there when she was 12. She learned a bit of writing, dancing, and reading, and she finished her education in her father's library. She was very infatuated with the idea that women should be well educated. Doesn't matter if they want to make a career out of that or just be educated for the sake of it. Jane Austen, just like every female writer or novelist or poet of her era, she published her novels anonymously. So she lived until she was 36 with just the financement of her parents. And when she was tired of that, she decided to publish her first novel, which was Sense and Sensibility. She published it in 1811 under a tagline that is by a lady, aka she didn't mention her name. And later on, when she published other books, they were under the tagline by the writer of Sense and Sensibility, and afterwards it would be by the writer of Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, etc. So she wasn't very famous. She wasn't famous at all as a novelist, but her family and the aristocrat environment she lived in definitely knew she was a writer, and they knew about her books. And so did her sister. Her sister supported the shit out of her during her publishing period. For the part of her romantic life, no, Jane Austen never married. Just like Emily Dickinson, my favorite girls were just not married, single women. However, she definitely had love interests. As I said before in the movie, there was this dude called Tom Lefroy, played by James McAvoy. The story behind this is that he was a lawyer. He was wealthy. He liked her. She liked him too. In the movie, it seems like she refused him, and they didn't end up together. But I've done a little bit of research, and it seems like he refused her, or his family in other way refused her. Afterwards, when she was 27, she got proposed to by this man called Harris Big Weather, but she didn't end up with that dude either. She accepted and then declined the arrangement, broke off the arrangement. Neither her nor her sister Cassandra married. Now, let's move to her books, to her 6 main novels. Jane definitely wrote other books other than these 6 novels. She wrote poems, she wrote other novellas, but these are the main ones, and these are the finished ones. They go in the order I stated before, the order of publishing, but I'm going to discuss them in the order of my liking. In order of the publishing year, we've got Sense and Sensibility, published in 1811. We have Pride and Prejudice, published in 1813. Then we have Mansfield Park, published in 1814. And then Emma in 1815. And then afterwards, she dies. She dies at 42. And there's gonna be 2 novels that gonna be published after her death, which are Northanger Abbey, published in 1817, and Persuasion, her last novel, published in 1818. For me, her best novels were the ones published after she died. This woman did not get credit when she was alive. She didn't get credit for her work. She wasn't praised or loved or appreciated, and so little people read her books. It was just after she died, now 200 years later, that people started loving her and adapting her books into movies and TV series and comics and shit like that. The adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, that goes like Pride and Prejudice and the Zombies. I love that one. I like that. That movie is incredibly funny. So back to the conversation. I'll give you my rating, because that is all that matters, right? This is my fucking channel, and probably my 5 viewers. I love each and every one of Jane Austen's books. Each and every one. However, if there was a gun put onto my head and I had to rank them, if I had to, this is the ranking I would give. Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, then Northanger Abbey, then Emma, then Sense and Sensibility, and lastly, Mansfield Park. This is how I'm gonna talk about these books. I'm gonna mention what the story is about. Then I'm gonna talk about how the heroine is, what are her characteristics, and then I'm gonna talk about the themes and lesson of the story. Persuasion was Jane Austen's last novel. She wrote it when she was 41, published in 1817 after Jane Austen's death. This book tells the story of Anne Elliot, a young woman who is, by the standards of her society, a very old lady. The woman is 27. She is the oldest of Jane Austen's heroines, and she's definitely the most mature one. We learn how this woman deals with the grief of not being with the man she loves. Anne Elliot is a wealthy woman. She descends from a wealthy family. She has siblings, 2 sisters. When she was younger, she loved this man called Captain Frederick Wentworth, and he proposed to her, and her aunt, Lady Russell, persuaded her, hence the title of the book, she persuaded her to refuse his proposal. Why? Because this man is not rich enough for her. You can already tell the theme of this book. She refuses, even though she had great feelings for him. A few years afterwards, she never marries, and she's still heartbroken by the fact that she didn't end up with the man she was in love with, and he got heartbroken as well. They meet again. He got richer. He comes over to the place where she lives, and he gets closer to her nieces and her family, and she just feels this huge regret, and all those feelings resurface again, and she misses him and he misses her too, but he is very heartbroken. Then he decides to find a woman who is determined and who will not let anyone persuade her. So it's like he got very fucked with the idea of someone persuades the woman you love and makes her change her mind and stuff. So their interactions are definitely the most awkward thing about this story. They still have chemistry, definitely, but their interactions are so awkward. Her nieces are into him, and one of them seriously wanna like snatch him, and he shows some affection to her too, but it's definitely just to make Anne jealous. It's clear that he still has feelings for her. So the story progresses in the sense that she regrets being persuaded by her aunt. He also regrets that maybe he wasn't insistent enough, and he didn't hold on to the woman he loves enough. They both learn to overcome this. At the end of the story, he asks her again, and this time she doesn't take the opinion of anyone. She runs to him in this dramatic scene, and she kisses him and hugs him and tells him that I love you, and no one is gonna persuade me out of that. The end. Our heroine is one, very easily persuaded, doesn't have much confidence in herself and her own judgment. She's almost a pushover, and she's extremely shy. At the end of the story, she becomes the opposite of all of those. She overcomes her fear, She learns how to make her own decisions and how to trust herself. She learns how to listen to her heart and her heart alone, and she becomes self-assured, which is the whole point of this story, that self-assurance is essential in love, in choosing your life partner. There's also a dark side to this, and that is how much economic status plays into matchmaking two people to get married, especially in this era. And I love this book especially because it's the other way around. Most of the other books, we have the heroine who is the full rare one compared to her love interest. For this one, we have the man who's poor. Not poor, but relatively has a lower status than Anne. And he's the one getting refused. He's the one being belittled. I like that a lot. I like how he's total badass and he went and he made of himself a great deal, then came back. I like this story. This one is definitely my favorite. I don't know why, it just has this beautiful, mature sense to it from the beginning to the end. You can know that the protagonists have grown a lot and have matured a lot and have learned from their mistakes. So when they get together, it feels so deserving. And the fact that they got a second chance already is a great thing. I didn't expect them to get together at the end. I know that Jane Austen will definitely have a happy ending, but I just assumed this one might be a little, I don't know, I assumed that he got over her or something like that, but he didn't, and they got back together. My next favorite book is everyone's favorite Jane Austen novel, which is Pride and Prejudice. It is the most famous one, and everything I have to say about it, people know it already. Even people who didn't read the book definitely watched the movie or something. So I'm just gonna be brief about this one. I watched this with my partner and it was such a nice watch. We have seen the 2005 version. Basically, this book is about how a woman from a low-class family gets the wrong first impression about a man from an upper-class family, and they hit it off wrong in the first time. They both have prejudices about each other. Even though there's definitely attraction going on, they don't admit it at the first glance. The heroine is Elizabeth Bennet. She's the sister of 4 other girls. After being invited to a ball with her sisters, she meets this man, Mr. Darcy. He's a companion of a richer dude, another rich man, who takes interest in Jane, Elizabeth's older sister, and they hit it off pretty good. These two blondies like each other, but somehow Mr. Darcy convinces his friend that Elizabeth's family is not worthy of their attention because their family show a little to no class. They are very impolite. The younger sisters are very annoying, straight up. The parents too. You can tell that they're opportunistic. Everybody is aware that people want to marry well. People look for money. They're trying to snatch a wealthy man in this era. But maybe Elizabeth's family was doing that on the open, and Mr. Darcy did not like it. He didn't like her family. He had a prejudice towards his family, and she didn't like his ass. She didn't like him. She thought he was snobbish, arrogant, which he kind of was. She judged the shit out of him as he judged the shit out of her. As events develop, he confesses to her that he had this impression of her because of the way her family behaved, and she taken so much pride, and she didn't like that at all, hence the title, Pride and Prejudice. Afterwards, so many things happened. They ended up liking each other. Inside all the gossip and lies and word to mouth type of shit, she learns that he's not as bad as she thought he is, and she will open up to him, and so will he. This is a heroine that is very resemblant to Jane Austen herself. She is extremely smart, extremely intellectual, even if her family isn't exceptionally wealthy. She is stubborn, she is entitled, she trusts her own judgment. As for Mr. Darcy, he's a very challenging person to be with. I like this dynamic a lot because, after all, a relationship should definitely have a challenging tone to it. We should challenge each other and always make sure we are driving each other to improve. So I love the theme in here. I like it a lot. This is a very, as I said, is a very resembling character to Jane Austen, whereas her sister Jane, the older sister, is resembling to Cassandra Austen, who is Jane Austen's older sister. So you can see how Jane is deriving her characters out of her own relationship with her sister. And this type of heroine, the smart one, is present in 3 books, whereas the other one, the shy, self-sacrificing, mature old sister type of figure, is also embodied in many books. Bottom line of Pride and Prejudice is, do not judge people based on their looks, families, and definitely don't trust your first impressions that much. I really like how this is also a critique on the prejudice young women face in construct with their families. The reputation of their family threatens their chance to marry well. When I say marry well, I straight up mean marry rich. Because this is all what it was about in the 18th century. Women had no other opportunity to have a better life other than marry a rich man. It was a career for women. It was the best she can do. Just a slight, small portion of women actually went to different routes. They tried to infiltrate men dominating fields like writing and medicine, but those were the minority. If you wanted to become rich, you just had to marry rich. Jane Austen does not hide this by any means. She does not deny nor disagree about the importance of money in marriage. She knows, she's realistic, and she knows that money can make a difference. She agrees that money can make people happy, and the marriage that is not financially stable will not last that much. She doesn't paint her novels with rosy colors. She's straight up honest about these things. But also, she does not tell you that matchmaking should be just about economic status only. She tells you through Pride and Prejudice, for example, that you can marry a girl that is beneath you, or through Persuasion, she tells you that you can marry a man who is beneath you when it comes to economic status, and you still can be happy if there was just enough love and passion and understanding, and if the relationship was extremely strong on its own, it can survive that type of challenge. Let's move on now to third book, which is Northanger Abbey. Northanger Abbey was published in 1817. It's a story about a young lady who is way into Gothic novels. This girl is extremely obsessed with reading horror stories. Her name is Catherine Morland. She is the youngest of Jane Austen's heroines. She descends from a family that is wealthy, that has many siblings. As I said, no heroine in Jane Austen's novels is a unique child. Catherine will have to move in with some relatives in Bath for a few months. Catherine is nice, young, naive, and very rich, which will be an opportunity for other people to want to use her. With Catherine, we are going to understand another type of exploitation that a wealthy young girl faces, emotional one. So being a rich young girl does not equal being just an object for marriage. There's so many people that wanted to be friends with Catherine and wanted to get close to her in order to climb the social stairs into heaven, aka upper class. And she is so naive to understand that. So first she will meet these two siblings, Isabella and her brother John. And they are definitely poorer, and she will, however, be friends with them. They will receive her in their home. They will be friends with her, but it's definitely not a genuine friendship. John will do his absolute best to make her fall for him, and Isabella will do her absolute best to get to know her more so she can have a way with her brother. She wants to get to meet Catherine's brother, who is a rich man as well. So these two siblings are trying to use these other two siblings. They're trying to marry them for money. They don't know nothing about these people. They do not care about them. They're just trying to marry well. Luckily, Catherine will not stay with these people for so long. Two other siblings will enter the picture, who are Henry and Eleanor Tinley, are somehow richer, and they have good manners, and you can feel that Eleanor's love for Catherine and the way she's trying to get close to her is very genuine, and it's because she truly want to make acquaintance with her, want to be friends with her. And Henry, on the other hand, also has better feelings for Catherine, and you can tell that they're genuine feelings. And in contrast with the other two siblings that I mentioned before, you can genuinely tell when someone cares to know you and when they're just being a hypocrite. I love that contrast so much. I enjoyed it. It was really humorous and it was funny. Moving on to the second part of this book, which is the most important one, the Tilney siblings will offer Catherine to go with them to Northanger Abbey, which is their palace or their big house. She will accept, she will leave Bath, she will leave her relatives, and she will go stay with them for a little while. They live there with their father. Their father is very rich, strict, scary man, and Catherine will see in him a monster like the ones she reads about in her novels. And she'll start having these ideas about Northanger Abbey and about the house. She'll start speculating that there was a murder in there. She'll try to find clues. Her imagination will guide her a little too far to think that Henry's father killed his wife, aka Henry's mother. And since her imagination is super wild, she will be convinced of that. She begins to see ghosts, dream of murder, all sort of stuff. And eventually she will tell Henry, hey, I think your father had killed your mom, and she's so sure of herself, and she will push him the fuck away. He will be totally weirded out, and the girl he likes and has feelings for will look like a lunatic to him. And eventually they're gonna send her away from Northanger Abbey. She's gonna go back to her family. But since all Jane Austen's novels end happily, Henry will come all the way back and find her in her father's home, and he'll tell her that yes, you had a wild imagination, but your intuition was right, and my father and my mother were not the best couple, and they did fight a lot, and my father did not kill my mom, but he was definitely violent to her. He will admit his feelings for her. He's gonna propose, and she's gonna accept, and they're gonna live happily ever after. As you can see, Catherine Morland is very immature, very young, very naive. I would say that she's quite like Emma, but on a type of childish, immature type of level. But don't make mistakes. Catherine is very shy. She's not outgoing. Emma is. We'll get to that. The themes that Northanger Abbey deals with, aside from being the most gothic and fun and scary book of the books, are hypocrisy and genuine friendship, and also wild fucking imaginations. It's crazy what a book can do to you. When you get so into these type of genres, you just kind of start seeing the world differently, and that's what happened to Catherine. She got way too obsessed with monsters and vampires and ghosts, which made her a little unstable when it comes to judgment. She didn't know how to distinguish between reality and fiction anymore. And I love this theme so much. It's very interesting. Even though all the heroines of Jane Austen are readers, all of them read well and they're very educated. But in Northanger Abbey is the only book when we see that the heroine took the reading thing a bit too far and got a little too swept away. Still, she's really fun. Seeing this young, naive girl interact in the real world, so humorous. It's so comedic. It's the most amusing book of Jane Austen, and the most unusual, definitely. Now let's talk about Emma, written in 1815. This is a great one. Clueless is an adaptation of this, by the way, if you didn't know. Emma is an orphan. Her mother is dead. She lives with her sister and her father, and she takes care of the house. She's very self-sufficient. She's very sure. She's very fucking confident. She is privileged AF, and she just has this one little problem, is that she is obsessed with matchmaking people and coupling others, and she thinks she knows what's best for everyone. Emma is not wise. As I said before, she's very immature. She is fun, she's talkative, she's the cupid for her friends and loved ones, just joining hearts and stuff. After she befriends a poor girl and tries to secure her a good man, this poor girl falls in love with a farmer. But Emma says, no, you're not gonna marry a farmer. There's no way. You are gonna marry a suitable man. You're gonna marry well. She knows best. That good good man will not care for her friend, and she will find herself alone after she refused the farmer she loves, and that man doesn't like her. Emma feels shitty. She's asking herself, what the fuck did I do wrong? And she's gonna try to make her best friend, Mr. Knightley, fall for our poor girl. So Emma has a best friend. Yay, I like that. I love the dynamic of girl-boy friendship in the 18th century. It's so cool. Her best friend, Mr. Knightley, will be like, hell no, I will not marry that girl. There's nothing relating me to her. I do not feel anything towards her. I mean, sure, she's nice, whatever, but I'm not gonna marry her. And Emma is offended. She's like, why won't you just accept to be with her? I know best. This is best for her, and things like that. She's stubborn. She is sometimes unlikable. She's very annoying. But she does this out of heart. She's actually very generous and nice, and she just wants best for her friend, as she did for other people. She just want to join hearts in the most profitable way. There's no harm in that, but sometimes she just steps over people's feelings and crosses boundaries, which is something she's gonna learn to not do later on in the story. Mr. Knightley, her best friend, will confess his feelings for her. He tells her that, I don't like your friend. I don't like no other girl. I like you. I want to marry you. And this takes her by surprise because the girl is accustomed to not consider herself a thing for love and marriage. She just like fixes up everyone else's life and doesn't think about hers. It's a form of distracting. She distracts herself from love. She thinks she's like above the whole love and marriage thing because she's privileged and she doesn't need to marry. So much that she erased her own emotions, and she couldn't see something so obvious that was going on, which is that Mr. Knightley had a thing for her. Her friend wasn't gonna be alone because that nice good man of a farmer will come back again for her. So she didn't fuck up her friend's life. And she'll join with her bestie in a marriage, and it's gonna be really sweet. I really love this. At the end, this stubborn heroine who is too confident and too nosy and too self-assured will learn to allow other people's perspectives to get into hers, and she'll learn how to see from different lenses. She'll learn to mind her own business as well. Definitely. Yeah, she got a lot of maturing to do during the book, and she became definitely a better person. One of the greatest books. One of the greatest books. It's a fun read. It's a very fun read. I feel like I said that about all the books. So, Emma, what is our takeaway? People who are privileged enough need to check their privilege. Being generous needs to come with kindness, and intervening in other people's lives should be based on good intent and done with heart and done with consideration. And people need to just be a little less nosy, honestly. In the 18th century, everyone got into everyone's fucking business. Everyone thought they had the right to tell some girl you should not marry that, or tell some dude you should not marry that. Lady Russell feels like Lady Russell from Persuasion, the woman who fucked up Anne's life. She feels like an old version of Emma if Emma didn't learn her lesson. Because if she didn't find a good man who will show her the way and tells her that what you're doing is wrong, she would have went along doing this and ended up ruining someone's life for real. Just like every other book, Jane Austen writes in third-person omniscient. You can tell that, of course, we're following one heroine, one girl, one perspective. Except for Sense and Sensibility, we have two heroines, two sisters, who are dealing with their own love lives separately and joining in when it's a supporting matter. They support the shit out of each other, but they're different as fuck. We have Eleanor, the older sister. She's incredibly reasonable. She's cold-stoned. She hides her emotions very well. She sacrifices a lot for her family. She just presses on herself and her emotions, and she is the sense in Sense and Sensibility. She's tough without being mean or being cold, and she's wise. She's very, very wise. She rarely shows signs of emotions and things like that. Whereas her younger sister, Marianne, is very sensitive and allows her heart to make every single one of her decisions. She's open, she's passionate, she's intuitive, she's everything that is the opposite of her sister. These two sisters have a younger one, Margaret. They have a crisis where they need to relocate somewhere less comfortable than their home. They basically become poor. And in the new place they move in, Marianne meets John Willoughby, who she falls for, but he's gonna leave her and break her heart to marry a richer woman. And Eleanor falls for Edward Ferrars and is mistakenly led to believe that he's engaged. This is gossip. This is what gossip does in the 18th century. Women cannot fucking stop talking and making up lies. So both girls are heartbroken. Each one of them deals with it in her certain way. Marianne is crying her eyes out under the rain. Eleanor is crying too, but in her own room in silence. But she generally deals with this in a kind of mature way. She just accepts what it is. She gets heartbroken, but she suppresses it. She doesn't make a big fuss out of it. Whereas Marianne is very outspoken about this. Marianne will meet an older man, Colonel Brandon, who is just like her sister Eleanor, very wise and very calm and reserved, and the fact that they balance each other so well and he admires her sensitivity, it's gonna make him like each other and fall for each other, even if he was definitely way older than her. They're gonna end up together, and she's gonna forget about the heartbreak of John Willoughby. And her sister Eleanor, after being extremely patient and trying to get over what happened, she will just have the greatest gift, and Edward Ferrars will come back to her because he was never engaged. It was just a lie. He loved her all along, and they're gonna end up together. You can't expect something other than a happy ending in Jane Austen novels. They all end happily. This one does it a little too fast. And I don't like how Marianne ends up with Colonel Brandon. I can't see that much chemistry between the two. I love the sister relationship, supportive, big sister type of love. I really like how they balance each other. I love how Jane Austen shows us that neither extremes are great, being overly sensitive and overly cold and suppress emotions aren't good. Neither of these are good. They should be balanced. If you can't find balance by yourself, you can find it in the people you love, like your siblings. And if that's not enough, you should find balance in the person you love. When you marry someone who is the opposite of you, when it comes to emotion management, between quotes, when you do that, you are assured that there's not going to be intensity in the relationship. One of you is going to cancel the other. For example, Marianne and Colonel Brandon, even though he is not a great match, according to me, in my opinion, he is still doing great when it comes to balancing her emotional intelligence well. Two people who are very cold, very, between quotes, distant, I don't think would do great. I don't think would do great at all. Same for two people who are super fucking sensitive. They will not do great in a relationship. I'm talking about relationship. Maybe a friendship would do. I don't know. I think a relationship, it should have a little bit of opposites in it. This was not my least favorite story. It was just the one that I didn't get as much fun reading as I thought I would. It's still a great story and has so many important themes. Especially in the beginning, they show you how girls can be scammed from their money and having no way to earn money but marrying, because the sisters were rich and they got scammed. Therefore, they had to move in. Moving on to Mansfield Park, written in 1814. Summary: we have a young girl called Fanny Price who goes to live with her wealthy uncle and aunt, Sir Thomas and Lady Bertram, in Mansfield Park. So now we're gonna go to the other side of the spectrum, seeing how a poor woman is treated. There's no in between with Jane Austen. There's either a poor heroine or a rich heroine. Jane, between her 30s and 40s, visited a place called Stone Abbey, which inspired Mansfield Park. The place, the architecture of it, the design of it, and the whole atmosphere inspired this place, this big palace where her aunt, who married someone rich, is living. Her mother, on the other hand, married someone less rich. She ended up having 1,000 kids, with no way to support them. So she sent one away, which is Fanny. In this house, Fanny is treated poorly by everyone except her cousin Edmund. She's living with her aunt, who has two other girls, Maria and Julia, and their brother Edmund. And she just is extremely drawn to him. And they're besties, they're friends, they share almost everything, until the devil siblings come into picture. Henry and Mary Crawford. These are rich people who are coming to Mansfield Park to get richer and find spouses. Mary likes Edmund, but also likes his older brother that I didn't mention, Thomas. Thomas is not an important part of this story. He's just the drunk, spoiled old kid that is doing absolutely nothing but abusing his father's fortune. Mary will try her luck with both kids and she'll settle for Edmund. And Henry, her brother, will also try his best with both girls, Julia and Maria. They have no feelings for neither of them. As I said before in Northanger Abbey, people didn't care about feelings at all.
They just cared to marry well. Men and women combined, most of them just cared to marry rich people so they can get richer. Few of them cared about the matters of the heart, and those people are the ones Jane Austen writes about. Henry tried his luck, as I said, with both Julia and Maria, and even Fanny, but she refused him because she knows deep down that her heart is into Edmund, her cousin, but she can't admit that to herself yet. What I like about this heroine is that she's so fucking self-assured. She knows exactly what she likes and what she wants. She's the opposite of the heroine of Persuasion, Anne Elliot. She is very confident in her own ideas. Even if she doesn't really know what she wants, she knows what she doesn't want. She's more like Elizabeth Bennet, but less rebellious. Eventually, after she refuses Henry, Edmund will drop off his engagement with Mary and confesses his feelings to Fanny, which comes as a surprise to everybody, me included. I didn't think for 1 second that he had feelings for her. It was just the other way around, but he actually likes her, and if you pay attention to what happens before, you might notice that he kind of got a bit of jealousy when it comes to Fanny. So he definitely liked Fanny. There's not too much things happening in here. There's not many events going on. The best thing is their friendship and the fun they have together, Edmund and Fanny. They're just so incredibly in sync together. She got with her cousin, which worries me a little. I hope their kids are fine. But it's still, it's still a very fucking good ending. I don't see him as her cousin as much as I see him as a very good friend and an intimate companion. Bottom line of Mansfield Park is, first of all, for Mary and Henry, don't be greedy, money eager bitches. Please. Care about your feelings first. You're gonna spend your life with this person, and money might be a solution to some problems, but it will not make you happy. Definitely not when there's not even one sparkle of attraction or love. So, you see, poor families do not support their kids or accept to do their maximum best. For Fanny's situation, her parents couldn't take care of her, so they literally just tossed her away to someone else to take care of her. And because she was a girl, she had no future. She had nothing to offer them, no work, no nothing, so they just tossed her away. She would never do that to their male kids. But this is how it went. In the era of Jane Austen, girls are treated amongst their families like objects. They are good for nothing but being married. That's it. It's so sad because even wealthy girls like Julia and Maria, they still would want to settle with men that are not as interesting as they are, not as fun. They're super boring, but they would still settle with them because they are fit for marriage and because they have money. And these are two girls that are already rich as fuck and they do not need a man's money. But they still would settle. With just a little bit of scars in your self-esteem, you would not stick up for yourself at all. Fanny sticks for herself when they almost order her to marry Henry. Everyone told her that she had to marry him, that he was the right man, that she would never have a chance with anyone better because he is rich and she's an absolute nothing. She has no title, no money, no fortune, no inheritance. And he was the best she could ever do, but she still stick for herself. Jane gives important life lessons through the lens of marriage and dramatic arrangements in the aristocrat community. She balances between extrovert, introvert characters. She shows us the importance of money. In marriage, she shows us everything that a girl gets through, the abuse she gets through for her to be happy, to find happiness. There's a lot of themes and a lot of life lessons we can learn from each and every one of her books. They are so rich with philosophy that would last for longer than 200 years after. This would still be relatable and readable and appreciated and useful even 200 years from now. It will never get old. I've seen the Jane Austen book club. It's a movie directed by Robin Swickard. It's about this bunch of women who gather to read Jane Austen's novels, and there's 5 of them plus 1 man. They said that they needed to get a perspective of a man inside their club, but they actually just thought he was cute. And they're gonna read all the books, and it's gonna help them deal with certain romantic problem going on in her life. And they'll derive meaning and lessons from the books, and you can see the discussion they have after every time they read a book, and they have like these different ideas and controversial explanations of every single scene and their own interpretations. It's just very, very interesting and very fun to watch. I liked it. It was a great wrap up after finishing the whole stories. There's also this other movie called Austen Land. I don't know what is it exactly about. I've watched the trailer, but I can't wrap my mind around what is it really about. I would love to watch it. I wanted to watch it before making the podcast, but I didn't have time. But I definitely will. So I will link all these movies that I mentioned, the books, and also the articles that I've read below. And I advise you all to read some of her works. Anything, any book, start whatever you want. Everything is a masterpiece, everything is great. You can even go just watch the movies if you're not into reading, or you feel like it's gonna take you a lot of time. Watch the movies. The movies are really relevant, I promise. They're extremely relevant to the books. I don't think there's a director that would dare to change something about an adaptation of Jane Austen's novels. Maybe if it's reinterpretation or like an inspiration like Clueless, yeah, that's definitely gonna be different, but I'm sure adaptations will get you through the morals and lessons just fine. Thank you for listening to my podcast. Thank you for being here. I am Sam, and this is Sincerely Anna. Bye!